Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to catch up with Jeff Braun. He's the CEO of Primera, and Primera is a cooperative in the turf and ornamental space, and he'll explain it a little bit better about what they do. But his members, sell seed, fertilizers, anything, irrigation. A lot of them are involved with golf course products and things like that. So it's definitely a departure from where he grew up in the power tool industry, but it's been a fun transition for him. But one of the great things about this conversation is we really talked about how to transition from really one business and one type of business into this cooperative world where you've got a whole lot of ideas and you've got to slowly meter them in, because really change management is all about the audience. What can they accept? And he learned a lot of interesting lessons around there. He said, one of the funnier things he told me was, the gumball machine is full, but I can only get one gumball out at a time. And I thought that was just perfect when talking about change management. So just a pleasure to catch up with him and watch his career develop here. And I hope you enjoy the episode. This episode of Distribution Talk is sponsored by InSQL Distribution Software. InSQL is a fully functional distribution-based software package. I only recommend software packages that were purpose-built to serve distribution. And these folks do it very well at a price point many smaller distributors can afford. Economy doesn't mean compromise. This company is on the cutting edge of distribution-friendly applications like VMI on mobile devices, mobile signature capture, mobile CRM, warehouse management software, and e-commerce development. If you're ready to step up to a fully loaded, scalable distribution package at an affordable price, look no further than InSQL Distribution Software at www.insql.com. That's INXSQL.com. Well, hey, Jeff, welcome to Distribution Talk. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with me today.
Jason, it's an honor. Had the opportunity to listen to many of your podcasts, scroll through the list of distinguished guests that you've had on. So just honored to have the opportunity. Thank you.
I think you're going to do great, man. I think it's going to be a good experience. Well, especially I grew up in the same industry you did, so
Yes.
It'll be kind of fun to talk about that. But if you wouldn't mind for the listeners, go ahead, just kind of share your background and how you got involved with distribution.
Yeah, it's maybe a unique story because I've been in two places for my career. So I was fortunate enough in my senior year of college to have an internship with DeWalt Power Tools. And that was in the industrial commercial sector of their business, where I was introduced to wholesale distribution. Yeah. And absolutely fell in love with it. When you fall in love, you do the opposite thing. I went and spent 2 years in big box retail and then quickly raised my hand and wanted to find a way back. And I was fortunate enough to spend my next 20 years in this industrial construction division doing probably 10, 11 different roles throughout those 20 years. And I had a tremendous opportunity to learn a ton about cooperatives and buying groups while my time was there, which ultimately led to back in 2020, the opportunity to come lead Primera. So it's all come full circle. Yeah. But 22 years with DeWalt. I've been with Primera now for 3.5 years. Those are my two landing places. And if things go as they're going, maybe those at the end of my career, I'll say I spent it in 2 locations.
So what was your favorite thing about DeWalt? I've got obviously I have a lot of experience around them. Spent a lot of time around, originally the old Black & Decker and then eventually DeWalt. So what was your favorite thing about that?
Yeah, it's a great question and one we get asked all the time, right? So, I think the first thing that is most obvious to everyone is you get to be part of a tremendous group of people, right? It is the people that work there. When you go and you look at where the people that I've had the opportunity to work with, learn from, mentor, whatever kind of scale that was, they are the who's who of executives across now multiple industries, right?
Sure.
And it's we used to talk about working at Black. I'm a legacy Black & Decker guy before Stanley Stanley, Black & Decker became one. And we used to talk about that working there was the fastest way to get an MBA without actually going to school to get your MBA, because you got to put your feet in the aspects of everything from sales to marketing to product development, HR, all those functions. We were so intertwined in what we did that it was just an amazing education. So certainly the people aspect would certainly be the first thing that comes up. Two, I would tell you that spending 20 years of the 22 years there in this industrial construction or wholesale distribution model, it's probably what crafted my love of high performance, because you got to deal with hundreds of often family-owned distribution models where you got to see best practices of things that worked for others, and you just couldn't help but to want to share with others who were struggling with something that you'd seen someone else succeed with and share that best practice aspect. And then third, I would tell you more on a personal side, when I left, when you got that question, I watched over those 22 years, the end user move from using cordless drills to cordless impact wrenches. And I never really knew why. And I had a product manager at DeWalt, who I'll leave nameless for the time being, but he'll know who he is, who told me, he goes, it's really pretty simple. He says, we slow down the mechanics of a tool so the user has less fatigue, but they achieve the job faster. And it was like a light bulb, Jason, right? Like it's counterintuitive to how we think that we're supposed to slow down to achieve more. And so when I left, I started this impact philosophy that I carry around with me, and I put through the filter of everything. And it really is, how do I slow down? How do I help others slow down so we cannot be tired and have this burnout that plagues so many of us? Then learn the skills, develop the habits and the processes that help us achieve greater and faster results. And it's been absolutely mind-blowing and a pleasure to share those insights since those 22 years of watching that transition.
That's fascinating where that came from. I'm glad you told the story, really where that came, and now it makes a whole lot of sense.
That's right.
But and it's interesting. We do draw these inspiration for presentations or thought leadership from our past experiences. Absolutely. And it could be something as simple as explanation of a power tool.
That's it.
I mean, I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And definitely, I think the marketing juggernaut that DeWalt became, just inspiring to watch. I mean, anything from NASCAR to bull riding, all kinds of stuff that, that DeWalt got involved with. And, again, DeWalt was a sleepy woodworking brand, when I was growing up. But
you're 100% right. And even in that year of internship, you had such an appreciation for what marketing and brand awareness became, right? This yellow and black phenomenon. That's been duplicated now by other folks in the space because they get it. And it was a tremendous privilege to be a part of that as you watched it build and grow over those years.
So you took that experience and decided to get into the co-op world and, in a totally different vertical. I mean, not even a closed vertical. This one's pretty far. So tell us about this one.
Yeah, you're right. Pretty unique. In fact, when I was called about the opportunity, they had to explain to me about the industry because I was like,
right, for sure.
I'm not sure I know what that is. And so interesting story, right? The network of people that I had worked with on the DeWalt side was actually the connection. Someone who had ran a cooperative had called me and said, hey, we've got this opportunity. I'm working with them to find their next leader. You'd be a great fit. They need you as much as you need them, and all those things that go along. And
sure.
I wouldn't have had that on my top 10 people who would call with my next opportunity. But this path that you leave when you spend so much time at a place and the relationships you build, it was key. And so I get this call and they're talking about this co-op and the turf and ornamental and pest control. And I was like, artificial turf?
Yeah.
Which is no, like real turf, like real grass. I'm like, oh, okay.
Grass and seeds and things like that.
You got it. And ornamental. And I'm like, what's ornamental? Like greenhouse and nursery. I'm like, oh yeah, I know a little bit in the greenhouse nursery. And then pest control, obviously we're all somewhat familiar with, but yeah, it was just a tremendous opportunity. I got the call about 8 weeks before COVID shut down the country. 6 weeks after that first introduction, I took the job, and for the first 13 months, never met a member or a supplier partner in person, which is crazy to think about. But what it did do, Jason, which was pretty unique, is in my first 100 days, I met everyone virtually, right? So every member, every supplier in 100 days, it's wasn't the nuances that we would have liked, but you certainly couldn't have accomplished that if you were out on the road trying to do so.
Absolutely. No, this is much more efficient. So
absolutely.
Well, good for you. Yeah. How long did it take you to figure out what these guys did for a living? Because I think I shared with you that I worked with a client in this vertical, and it took a while to figure out exactly what how they made money. What did they do for a living? So
yeah. It's a great question, Jason, and I've shared this kind of perspective numerous times. The distribution model here versus the distribution model of distributors in DeWalt is very, very similar, just
Yeah.
selling different products to a different end user. And so I think my biggest fear was, I don't know the industry.
Right.
Was I was able to put that aside to say, well, I understand the wholesale distribution model.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you started to have conversations about where they were finding struggles and what the issues, we were like, well, that was the same thing I would have heard from folks in the other side, right?
Right.
And because I spent so much time on the manufacturing supplier side, I had maybe a slightly different perspective than my predecessors of what that meant and what that opportunity was. So yeah, I think the differences are the product, the opportunities are very similar, and the struggles are almost exactly the same.
This is Jeff, this is what I found, throughout my 20-year career, again, I grew up in the construction supply business, but when I started working with, again, folks like that you serve, I realized the same thing. And I think that's been one of the coolest things about my transition away from that, the privately held family business to this world is, distribution is fairly universal. Yes, the products are different. There are definitely nuances, but no, it's, the more we can really realize that it is, that there are fundamental principles in distribution and there are fundamental challenges and conversations that you have, then you can serve any industry in the verticals. I mean, it's
Well said.
crazy.
You
Yeah,
bet.
it's absolutely crazy.
Absolutely.
But when you came over, people are like, all right, well, we got a tool guy. What's the tool guy supposed to do in our business here? So
were you in some of those meetings, Jason? I think that was absolutely some of the questions. So, I think it was the board chairman at that time, and the board was very supportive and actually had an on-purpose strategy to look outside the industry for perspective. I'm going to assume, based on conversations, they were looking for someone who had run cooperatives in the past. But I think the position that I came from with DeWalt and the experience that I had with many of the folks across that side of the business, I had this really good perspective of what I thought best practices of what co-ops could be, right? Because I think co-ops, buying groups, we can often deal with what you and I have described in the past as a perception issue, right? It's this, well, what value do you bring? And the reality is every member and every supplier, regardless of whether you have 30 members or 200 members, value is defined differently for them. And so I think the vision that I came into the group with was we wanted to get out of being in the 50,000 foot cloud overview of Primera and get into the trenches with each of our members and suppliers to understand their business so that we could determine what part of what we do provides them value and focus on that.
Yeah.
And so I think that started to begin to build some trust. The first year, right, with COVID, it was a crazy year. We boomed during COVID because we were an essential classification. When you think about golf courses, lawn care, landscape, pest control, right, all of that. And so we boomed. And so I almost got to kind of sit back and learn for a year without having to focus too much on what we did. And then in the next 2 years, we changed we changed 100% of everything we did as Primera, from our staff to our operations, to our process procedures, to how we managed rebates, finances, we changed it all. So I think your point is, here comes this tool guy. Wow, this guy's got 1,000 things that he wants to try to accomplish. Oh my, were we really that bad? And it wasn't that. And it actually had to teach me how to get out of the corporate environment where you operate with speed.
Yes.
To take a deep breath to say, let's focus on a couple things. How can we do those couple things well to build trust so that if and when we want to swing for the fences on a big initiative, you have enough of your membership, both on the supplier and the member owner side, to say, yeah, this group's say-do ratio, they've been knocking the ball. Yeah, I'm ready to take a big swing initiative that can impact the group and potentially, I'd make an argument, some of the things we've thrown out there to impact the industry.
It's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that before, but if I think about, the culture you came from, the very fast-paced quarterly mandates and, just the racing of that DeWalt juggernaut, to then the client that I knew in the space and the pace, that they travel at. I mean, there's some differences there. I mean, this is definitely something that you needed to get used to. So I'm sorry, I don't want to belittle, the industry that you're serving today, by saying that they are slower, but I think they're more slower and thoughtful around what they are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's a smaller industry in the terms of number of distributors in the marketplace, so it's a little bit more condensed. So I think if you take the nature of the industry and then tack on this new guy, don't know, don't trust, we're going to have to earn some things, right? You
Right.
took slow and really slowed it down, which was certainly the first few years here. And it's exciting to kind of see ourselves come over that crest with the trust and engagement and involvement where our members are getting us involved and we're going, oh, what have you thought about this? Because we've got even the team that we've brought in has got a ton of experience, both industry, wholesale distribution, manufacturing, supply side,
Yeah.
and the perspective and ideas. And you can see the light bulb go off like, these guys might just know what they're doing, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that's hard sometimes, when you come from that one place, and that's where the idea generation a lot came from, and obviously the customers that you serve. But yeah, and then you see another vertical. It can be very eye-opening, and you're like, hey, this is pretty slick here. I kind of like what
Yeah,
these guys do. And
absolutely.
maybe my grass wasn't all that green sometimes over, before. And
Yeah.
so
I kind of use this perspective, right? At DeWalt, you woke up every morning and there was a scorecard in front of you about how you were performing, right?
yes.
You knew what you did yesterday, this week, last month,
Yep.
quarter, year, all that stuff.
Yeah.
We don't have that level of detail. In fact, I think it was Jennifer Murphy that was talking on your podcast about rebate management and getting transparent in rebates. And well, we were 90 to 120 days in the rear from being able to communicate what our group purchased and how much and all those kind of things. And we never had it at a category or even a product, or in our industry, we call it the active ingredient level. And so we've embarked on a similar journey, a lot with the help of folks like Jennifer, to understand what they're doing to get to there. And again, now all of a sudden, what was slow because there was a trust, now we have trust so we can speed it. And now they see the outcome and the analytics, and now we're acting proactively versus reactively. Now you start to build that speed momentum where people are willing to jump off with you because your say-do ratio has been so good.
So interesting, you talk about the transparency thing. And yes, that was one of the big things that Jennifer of Net Plus Alliance changed in that organization, is really opened up the transparency there. So, and that was something that obviously, that you really focused on and wanted to see. I'm kind of wondering, how did the membership run before that? And I mean, did people just be, they were okay with, I don't really know what I'm earning, and I'm going to get a check at the end of the year. I guess I've just never really understood that because, again, I grew up in a cooperative that was not like that. That was very transparent. So.
Yeah, I think you and I may have talked about almost the you don't know what you don't know type scenarios, right?
Yeah.
That it's a little bit of, well, this is the way we've always done it. It seemed to have worked. The group is growing. We know growth will hide a lot of sins and errors within our organizations. And we have been a hyper-growing organization over the last 10 years. And so if you look at the evolution of Primera, right? Started in 2001, Franz Jager came in, got three distribution partners to come together and say, hey, we got to compete against the nationals. How are we going to do it? Let's get some, and it started growing.
Yep.
And he was probably the guy that put Primera on the map to give Primera credibility. The next gentleman, John Gertz, came in, and John was really tasked with hypergrowth. He added members, he added suppliers, we got more verticals, brought in seed, fertilizer type things into the space. And so that hyper growth, you would make an argument, probably hid some of the sins of our processes because we didn't scale our processes with those. So I think what perspective I've brought to the group is we got to take a little bit of a step back. Let's talk about what we can be. What does that mean? And with that, is that of value to you? And you start telling a distributor that you can look at your rebate calculations and tie it back to an individual product, a category, a certain part of a supplier's program, the value that gives to a member, but also the value it gives, because the rebate's often the second largest investment that suppliers make into a distributor outside of price.
Yep.
And that transparency, allowing them to understand where that goes, is just such a value across the board. And so I would share with you, we are still embarking on that process, and it's taking us twice as long as I would have guessed when we started,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
But as we get there and we start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're starting to see some of these things take shape, you're going, oh, now imagine what we can do with this information. It's powerful.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you don't share how the money is made, if you don't share that, how do you expect growth? I mean, how do you build on growth? Again, when you don't share the way that rebate is generated, the calculation, I think it's very difficult for that distributor to perform the way that a supplier would want them to. I mean, as you said, the investment here in that marketing allowance or rebate or whatever we want to call it, that is to grow business. That is the intent of that, is not just a nice thank you parting gift. It's that you want the folks to invest in their organizations so that they can build on the brand and drive the brand and all of those things. And if you don't show them how the money works, they're just not as motivated, I think.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our members would get a check. We've improved the process, and now they get a check quarterly. We've improved the detail by 50%. We got another 50% to go. But now suppliers can come in and take credit for that, right? And versus them seeing an individual check and really not knowing where to, a supplier can go in and have a meeting, know, hey, no, Primera just sent out the checks. Want to say congratulations and thanks for growing the business, and that equated to this. And now they get to go in and say, or in the very near future, right?
Okay.
We're gonna condense this.
You're getting there.
Yeah. We'll be able to walk in and say, hey, congratulations. Thanks for growing. Thanks for focusing on this category within our structure, because this was our focus as a company where we wanted to invest time and money, and you came alongside and helped us achieve our goal. I mean, that's the perfect scenario, right? That's the utopia state of a supplier being able to put every dollar back, take credit for that investment, and for a member distributor partner to say, yeah, I love what you're doing, and I'm going to spend your money. I'm going to buy your products. I'm going to reach the end user at a way we've never done before.
Jeff, and I think, just thinking a little bit about, your input and your investment or change into this group is you come from that supplier perspective. You come from the understanding of what the supplier is, I hate to say it this way, but buying in the deal,
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I think if the person who is running or leading the organization doesn't take that perspective, doesn't take that side of it, it makes it very unsatisfying for those who pay the bills. And I'm just going to say, that's where the money comes from, the suppliers.
100%, right? And I think that one of the favorite things you got to do as a supplier was with your most loyal customers, you would celebrate, right? Sometimes you'd get the big artificial check and you'd make the presentation and you'd thank them and their whole teams would get together and you'd think, oh, like that's fun. And there's this misconception that suppliers don't want to do, they don't want to pay all the, no, let's be clear. Every supplier wants to pay every dollar a rebate because, as you described, that means we are growing oftentimes better than the market. So you could almost equate, if a supplier is paying out every bit of rebate, they've taken share in the marketplace. And so when you get to that level of transparency, you allow a supplier to celebrate with an individual member to be able to make good, profitable business decisions. And then our job is to be able to come around to the up and coming suppliers or the suppliers who are struggling to grow and give them some insights about where their program, their product line, their profitability aren't driving the level of growth that they want, and give them some ideas of how to improve upon that. And now you've fixed the, I don't want to say fix, but you've created that co-op value proposition that is what everyone is looking for.
Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. As you were going through this, transition period, and you're still going through that.
Absolutely.
Some folks didn't want to go for the ride.
Yes.
And you had to make some tough decisions. Could you share a little bit about, how that worked or what happened?
Yeah. And I think this is where my 22 years with DeWalt helped me prepare for this, because when you go through significant change, even when in your mind, you're putting your head on the pillow at night going, I know why we're doing what we're doing and what it does for us in the future is a no-brainer. When you make as much change as we made, some people aren't on board with that. Yeah. And I think we've always sat back and said, hey, now that we're going to put processes in place, now that we're building systems, now that we become transparent in nature, those that maybe were coming along for the ride get exposed. And maybe some even go, hey, I appreciate it, but I don't need what you're doing because I'm able to do that ourselves. And so we've lost some members over the last year, which is painful as a cooperative because we don't buy and sell, right? So we are tied to what each of our members do. But the beauty of it is as that has happened, those who buy into what we're doing, buy in more, right? Because they recognize, we've lost some members. Well, what can I do to better support the group? And so I think even selfishly as a team, and we're just a small team of 4 folks who operate this behind the scenes day in and day out, we may overreact to a member going, hey, I don't think this is a great fit. We look at it as a top line, bottom line, what does this mean for the group? And other members are going, hey, if they don't want to be here and support what you're trying to get done, why would you want them here, right? And so it's been a really unique perspective, whereas maybe we hit the panic button and our members are going, it's okay. And you have to recall that when we started, we were 3 members, right? At the high point, we were 63. And we get asked all the time, Jeff, John and Sam and Morgan, we get asked all the time, what's the right number of members? What's the right number of suppliers in a group? And we go, I don't know. I'd rather have 20 that are super engaged than 100 who aren't, right? And so it really does, and we're working on that too. How do you measure engagement and being able to partake in all the value add things that we put in place for members to really correlate for those that engage and allow us behind the curtains and plan and strategize with us? Their growth is X% more than those that don't. Those kind of details become very powerful. But yeah, certainly some have said, hey, this isn't where we want to be. Some for very good reasons. They have the scope and capabilities to do the things that maybe a co-op would do for others. And some just saying, hey, there's just too much change. You've taken the value away. And while we make the pitch, it isn't always right for what they're looking for. And that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, yeah, some people feel like they have outgrown the associate, the group or something like that. And I've seen that before, but boy, I don't know, having someone like you all in my corner, as a distributor it's pretty powerful. I mean, as I said, I've seen this, for most of my life, most of my career, how well it has worked, not only for the family business I grew up in, but for others that I know and am very close to, and spend a lot of time around the cooperative world. And I think there is some misunderstandings about it, but no, I really believe that you are on the right track. And, and there's some really great technology you can bring into the organizations that you didn't have access to before. And the on the membership side too. I mean, there's just so much more that you all can add. I'm just a huge fan of that kind of coming together and collaboration in these businesses.
You describe it well, Jason, because I think when we talk about co-ops, buying groups, and the perception, the easy place to spend all your time is simply the financial gain. Yeah. More purchases, more rebates, better price, all those things. That has to be the ticket into the dance. If you're not doing that, providing that value, then you're in trouble. And I think that's where maybe a little bit of the vision that the team now has brought into play is if we do what we're doing to bring transparency to that, we'll be best in the industry in terms of managing those things, your financial aspect of being a partner here at Primera. But here's all the other things. What are you struggling with? Well, we struggle with, recruiting and retaining top talent. Well, how can Primera bring some value into that, right? Well, we don't have a great sales training program. Well, how can Primera, and I see this benchmarked amongst many other cooperatives and buying groups, training and education becoming such a big portal to provide that. So we are embarking upon that second phase of now that we have the pipeline to get our transparency and the financial model to be best in class. Here's all the other things that make Primera sticky, right? That you're going, they're taking care of me financially. Oh, and they're doing all these other things. And so it becomes that value proposition outside of strictly just financials that will ultimately determine whether or not we're successful.
Yeah, I think that the most successful cooperatives, they do find those other things. And I think training and education is a great place to, really hang your hat on. I mean, that's a really great pillar to look at, because what member doesn't need some sort of assistance, because it's very, very difficult to train the associates in the company. It's very difficult to invest the kind of money that's really necessary to make them best of class, in the organization. So that's a great place for a cooperative to fill that void and say, you know what, with scale, we can create these amazing opportunities for your associates that you probably couldn't have afforded to do on your own.
Yeah.
So.
And we've often said, if you did nothing else to take advantage of being a member of cooperative, other than talk to other members in the cooperative, right?
Absolutely.
The value takes care of itself. And I think that's probably one of the unique things that I see when it talks wholesale distribution is their willingness to share what they do and how they do it with other members in the space. And so I would say we network very well, but we're looking at how do you elevate that? How do you take it to the next level, right? And that becomes back down to us is how do we identify, hey, we talked to Joe and he's got this tremendous opportunity. He's struggling with this. Well, guess what? When we talked to Lisa with this member, they were dealing with the same thing and they solved it 5 years ago. How do we connect those two to allow them to have that conversation and get that in? But again, that doesn't necessarily flow to the bottom line or to our dividend payments at the end of the quarter or year. No. But boy, it's like a medal on your hat that says, well, look at what happened by being a member here. And I think that is truly why we call ourselves a cooperative, right?
Absolutely. I've had more conversations with guests here that talk about that benefit right there is the ability to share ideas and bounce things off people who have maybe done it a little bit longer than we have, especially, younger people coming into their organizations, the ability to listen, to kind of glom on to, more elder statesmen, if you will, in these cooperatives. And here's the beautiful part, as you said, these folks love to share. They're like,
yes, they do.
Come on, kid, let me share. Here's where I got kicked in the teeth and don't do this.
Yeah. So. Feather in their cap when they can help people in the industry become more successful, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an intrinsic reward, that just, yeah, you can't quantify that. It doesn't fall to your
Yes.
bottom line, but
Yes.
it does really improve that stickiness that you mentioned.
Yes.
That's where people are drawn to these. And I think in smaller organizations, it's even stronger. Sometimes when we look at the larger association, the larger trade association, it's maybe more difficult to find your people there and to find,
Yes.
those mentors. But boy, when you get into the smaller cooperative, for some reason, and again, this has just been an observation over the years, that's where some of that really tight bonding occurs.
Yeah. Again, I think looking across the best practices, right? Most do their annual meetings, and at that annual meeting, there's a one-on-one with a member and a supplier.
Mm-hmm.
And now many of us are talking behind the scenes and saying, well, why isn't there a one-on-one with member to member? Right.
Yeah.
And you go, it's so obvious and it's what we do. And so trying to figure out ways to encourage that and put a process in place to get our members engaged with each other. It's rewarding. And by the way, every time they do it, we as Primera learn.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're able to take that information. And now if you manage it correctly, you can take an opportunity and go, yeah, here's the 10 members we need to involve with this because they've raised that red flag as an opportunity. And now the next thing you know, it's interesting as we're talking, one of the things that comes to mind, Jason, when I got here, talk about that perception issue is suppliers were very much adamant that, you're never going to get all your members to align on a strategy. And this was certainly from the best practices that I had worked with in co-ops and buying groups with my DeWalt years was very quickly was I able to pivot and say, you're correct.
Yeah.
But if I get enough, then you'll be happy, right? I don't need 50 of members to do it when 25 are the ones who are focused on what you're trying to achieve. And so even that slightly mind shift for our suppliers to say that everyone in our group's not a fit for every supplier and vice versa. Let's work to identify where those opportunities are. And then you start to figure out where your conversion opportunities are versus I want to convert everybody. Yep. Probably
Ain't gonna
not.
happen.
Probably
It's
not.
not
Right?
gonna
Yeah.
happen.
Exactly
Yeah.
right.
I think, as we both know, distributors are independent with a capital I. They're not always
Yes.
going to drink the Kool-Aid. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, that's great.
so you've made some progress and you've realized that you've got to slow it down a little bit to make impact here.
Yes.
So where's the group going in the future? I mean, I forgot. How many years have you
Three and a half.
3.5 now. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So where are we going next?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it is that ability to take a step back and allow what we're doing to come into focus and progress, right?
Yeah.
And be okay with the time frame that it takes to get there. We should always push to try to speed it up. How do you execute in 3 months instead of 6 months? But allow its natural course of action. I think, Jason, the thing I would share was when we have all of those things in place, when we've got those processes, those systems, that transparency built out, our ability to recruit new members because of what we have here, our ability to expand into adjacent verticals that some of our members participate in today, but may not be a part of our cooperative, right? We talked about grass seed, we talked about chemicals, we talked about fertilizer, but our members are in irrigation, they're in hardscapes, they're in equipment, right? Comes full circle. Many of our members are in outdoor power equipment, right? Some things from the old world as well.
Sure.
So I think when we do this, that will allow us to, our value proposition will lead with the financial and market share and purchase gains that you can achieve, but we'll have this value proposition that says, here's what we do better than anyone else. And who wouldn't want to be a part of that? And I think that's what 2024 for us is all about. That's when a lot of that will come to fruition. So our ability not just to grow and outpace the market, our active members have grown 6 of the last 7 years, outpaced the market growth, which is phenomenal, even with losing some members. So you put that on top of with systems and processes to talk about pricing, profitability, forecasting, those type of things. That value is not in our space today unless you are the big national or regional and you've got those at your disposal. And we're bringing those to the table. And I think that will change how suppliers want to do business with us. I think it will change distribution, member owners, distribution who want to be a member here and take advantage of that. And I could take you down a long road of where our team thinks we could be in 5 years, right? Yeah. And it is very much that DeWalt mindset of, oh, can you 10x? What happens if you can 10x the business?
Right, sure.
I get that's probably not, but it does bring some neat ideas in the scope of where we could take this group moving forward.
Well, again, you come from a unique perspective. I mean, you're coming from a very, as you said, 10x. It's a very fascinating. It's exciting.
Yes.
And, I think if you're group can catch just even a piece of that, just a part of it,
You got it.
then you're going to see, just some amazing things happen. And I'm excited for you, man. I think it's a cool change. First of all, change of pace, but also this new opportunity to look at, a vertical that maybe hasn't grown at a tremendous pace. They've kind of done things the same way over, but this is going to be kind of fun. I mean, you've got, some exciting times ahead, and you've got tricks up your sleeve. That's a beautiful thing. You come
No
from
doubt.
another, you got tricks. Oh, it's like, okay, I think I can bring out another trick. So
yeah. Well, I think it's that, Jason, and I would tell you, right, with someone with all these ideas and you want to run, while you're doing that, you take a step back and you learn so much, right? It goes back to this networking piece. Well, share those things with us. I wasn't aware of that because I still don't know the product side of our business. I've got product experts on the team, but the business aspect of it, if we do our job right, we're the cheapest consulting option a member and a supplier could bring into their group on how to help grow their business. Nice. And that perspective puts a lot of things into place. And as we dealt with folks coming in and helping us consult on the business, they learned as much about our business as we learned about them of how we could improve the business. So when you get that flowing both ways, you're in a really good spot for long-term success.
Oh, I absolutely agree. So, Jeff, this has been fantastic, man. I'm so glad we reconnected, and
yes,
I love where you are right now, man. This is a cool, it's a cool vertical. I had a lot of nice years, working with, someone in the vertical. So, boy, I wish you the best of luck with this. It's going to be a fun ride.
I appreciate it, Jason. We are fortunate to have a great group of member owners and suppliers who support what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And that makes getting up every day and fighting the battles and trying to figure out a way to do it right, but do it fast. In a way that meets what this industry needs is really exciting and an honor to be a part of.
Great. Well, anyway, hey, my friend, I look forward to the next time our paths cross.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Thanks for the time, Jason.
You bet. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider sharing with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast application. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by the brilliant team at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, the Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.